Welcome to The Problem, a Lockwood & Co. podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And today we are talking about the second part of part 2 of The Empty Grave.
Yeah. It's still La Belle Dame Sans Marie. Marie. Yeah, definitely that. And not Merci. 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking the French. Without prompting. Yeah, so chapter 6, I guess. Let's just dive right in.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of covering a lot today.
There's a bunch of high action happens here. I mean, it's just jam-packed with there's not a lot of action, actually.
No, it's mostly introspective and research.
That probably means more talking by us, though.
I didn't take that many notes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Who knows?
10-minute episode, everyone.
I'm
You already
sure.
know how long it is, because you've got this. We don't know how long. We're the ones on the journey, not you. In chapter 6, Lockwood brings Lucy to his family grave.
Could be their first date.
Yeah. I told you before, like, I was one of the weird kids who went to the grave to hang out. It turns out Lockwood is also one of the weird kids.
I mean, I think that's true of all. They're all the weird kids. That's why they are what they are.
Yeah. It's like, let me show you my favorite place on earth.
The chapter art is the 2 gravestones. And I genuinely didn't think that this happened so early in the book. So I was just like, when did they stop by a graveyard? There's no...
Yeah, what's the ghost?
Like, the
Yeah.
job isn't at a graveyard. And then I was like, oh, maybe it's the Lockwood family. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. I don't know. But it is.
I can't discern the picture that's on one of them. I guess they talk about like a hooded woman. I guess that's what that is. Okay.
It's very Virgin Mary-esque.
Yeah. So I guess that's what that is. It's a little bit hard for me to read that, though.
I didn't see it at all until you were like, I can't discern. And then I just sort of looked at it at a slightly different angle. And I was like, oh, yeah. Hooded woman.
Obviously. Right. Yeah.
Strange. It's just sort of all happened right then as you were saying it. We start off just like right after Mr. Tufnell has left Portland Row. And they are sort of discussing the situation at the theater. And I do love this line. According to Lockwood, who knew such things, it was a rare example of psychic enchainment in which the victim's mind was ensnared.
Right.
Why does Lockwood know such things?
Yeah.
Why doesn't George? But whatever. Or Lucy or Holly. It just seems an odd way to have phrased.
And I don't think we've ever seen this. It's like a new concept in the story, but like, okay.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm willing to go with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of ghost stuff we haven't seen. I just thought that was an odd way to phrase that. Why do we trust that Lockwood knows such things and that he's not just being an ass? Because that
just making it up. Right.
Yeah, that seems more him.
Yeah.
But whatever. Moving on. They kind of decide that it's a form of ghost lock, but for your mind instead of your body.
Yeah, and like I said, I feel like this is the origin of like the stuff that was going on with Nori, and that maybe they would have expanded on this in the show. That something like this is like what is affecting all of those kids in the hospital and seems to be like spreading across the country more and more or something.
I would have been interested to see how in the show world where ghost lock is so different, how they would have interpreted this. But that's never going to happen.
No, I would like to like at least get the scripts or something, or I don't know. I'm sure they can't do that for all kinds of reasons, but
well, they probably haven't written them.
Yeah,
they're not going to work without getting paid.
I think they did make a second season. They like fully scripted out the second season. I'm pretty sure, or at least broke the.
Yeah, like I can see having a detailed sort of play-by-play, but
right, yeah,
actual scripting,
You're probably
I
right.
wouldn't want them to do that without having gotten paid for it, so.
Yeah. But yeah, we kind of move on from that whole thing. Or, I mean, they talk about it some more, but George is like, hey, we got lots of stuff to do. Like, we've got Marissa, the problem, La Belle Sans Merci. I got to leave. So he's got to go do research.
But first he's like, let me show you what I have found in your sister's bedroom.
Right.
And it's
I'm glad
really
that
just,
this comes back. Yeah.
I am too. But it really is just an excuse for George to be uncouth.
To Lockwood.
to Lockwood to not realize, to just have no social skills.
I didn't really think about that, but I think you're right, because maybe that's what triggers the trip to
100%.
Yeah. I haven't put that together.
And it's like nothing malicious on George's side or anything like that. He just doesn't know what he's saying.
Right. Yeah. So George is excited about some stuff that he's been unpacking crates in Jessica's room. And I think he's unpacked the last of the crates, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's excited to show Lockwood all of the new stuff, quote unquote, new
to them. Yeah. So there's a bunch of like sources in jars, very similar to how Skull's jar is set up, but these ones are lined with lead, so you can't see what's in them.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sealed. And we do get mention of there being a couple more cloaks that they found.
Mm-hmm.
Though they don't like go into if they're the same type of cloak. They just say that there are other cloaks.
Yeah, a feather cloak, a fur cloak.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff, beads and necklaces and stuff. And yeah, the bottles. Some of them are cracked. He's got all this stuff like wrapped, like in a chain circle. So it's pretty safe.
And George sort of offhandedly mentions that he thinks everything his parents at home have a psychic aura or whatever significance around them. And even the stuff like hanging on the walls downstairs and stuff. And this all comes back later.
Yeah, I think I said this before, but I think this is literally symbolically literally unpacking your trauma, right? And how if you will do that work, like the answers are there. You don't have to be stuck in this thing of like, I was wounded and orphaned and like, woe is me. And I am always that child who is trapped in that moment. Like by going through the room and, unpacking his parents' stuff, he becomes more powerful and the answers are here. Like the empowerment happens here. I think it's a really powerful symbol from Stroud to write it in this way, to locate these things in this room and, the significance of this room later as a like escape and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's really smart, that trauma, is a source of disempowerment, we feel like, but actually, like, if you are able to have the courage to follow it through, I think that it can be liberating. It can be the source of transformation in your life.
I also like the idea that his parents lined the house with what he needed.
Yeah. They gave him what he needed. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. They were taking care of him and he didn't even see it yet.
Yeah.
As much as they could. Yeah.
They're helping when he needs it most.
Yeah. I like that.
Me too. So then, George leaves to do some research, both on the overarching plot and on the job coming up. And then Holly goes home and nobody else is around, so it's just Lucy and Lockwood. And instead of having a good makeout session, Lockwood is going out and invites Lucy to go with him. And I really do enjoy his whole, if you're not doing anything important, and her in her head just saying, I so wasn't.
I so am not. Yeah.
I'm ready to go. And then she asks if it's a job, and he's kind of cagey about it, and he's like, just bring your rapier. Which, at least he said that, because they are going to a graveyard, but...
And who knows?
Or cemetery.
Like, the sun is setting, anything could happen, so why not? Why not go armed into the city? This world is so weird.
Like... I mean, they always do have their rapiers, though. So,
yeah,
it is weird.
But you're right. He doesn't disclose to her the idea. He's just like, she's like, on a case, and he's like, of a kind. And then he's just like, follow me.
Yeah.
And they walk there. I tried to look up, like, on the Marylebone Road, if there's like a cemetery anywhere around it, or a Marylebone cemetery, and I couldn't find one in London. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I couldn't find it.
Potentially fictional cemetery.
Yeah. It's abandoned in this world, so.
It's abandoned. Well, it's walled off.
Yeah.
So, which makes sense with a graveyard.
Yeah. It says it's heavily salted, encased in iron.
Yeah. There's like the normal fence that, most cemeteries have around them. And then there's like an iron fence around that. So that presumably a high iron fence that ghosts can't get out and people can't get in. But Lockwood has found a way and they scramble over the fence. And he leads Lucy through like ivy debris that she can kind of tell has already been whacked away by a rapier in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Implying that Lockwood or somebody has been here before.
Or comes here on the regular.
Yes. And then we are shown 2 graves. And we see that the bigger one, like we said with the hooded woman, is for Celia and Donald Lockwood and says, "Knowledge sets us free." And then the smaller one is for Jessica Lockwood.
Okay, so I was thinking there was 3. But okay.
No,
I
there's
see.
2. There's 2 and then an empty
unmarked
spot.
Yeah, like an
empty grave, if you will, next to them.
Right. The name of the book is This is the empty grave that we're talking about. Or one of them. We talked about that earlier, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's also like a kind of symbolic thing here going on. Like this is a big shock to everyone listening that I see it this way. Like he unpacked his stuff at home, like on the inside, like he's shared all of this stuff with his family. And now I think he's able to share, like that was all his past. And now I think he's able to share this vision of the future with Lucy. Like I showed you like what my life was and what my life is because we live it together. But this is what I see the rest of my life as being by bringing you here.
That's such a great thing to show the girl who has a crush on you. This is our future.
Right.
A grave.
It shows you like how impoverished, I think, and even like childish in a way, his vision of the future is, that there's just nothing there. But I think by bringing her here, it does change the possibilities of that future because now Lucy is here, like literally here.
Yeah.
And something else could happen because he's, found the courage or has the space to bring her here.
It's also just like incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Like when he says, it's nice, don't you think, burying the family together? I don't want to be left out. I come here sometimes too. Like that's so sad.
Ugh. Lockwood. And she talks about in an offhanded way why this is a good idea, like in practical material terms, because the spirits of the dead could all be together and it might help to put them at rest and not come back.
Mm-hmm.
So there is even a good reason to do this, but it's like, I don't know. I find that extra sad.
Yeah. And then sort of after, Lucy's just kind of standing there marveling at the sadness of it all and the fact that there's that empty spot waiting for Lockwood.
Mm-hmm.
After that, he tells her the story of how his parents died, which was not far from where they are, and therefore not far from Portland Row. When they were taking a cab to the train station, and they were like blocks from home, and they were in a terrible car accident. Like, like the fuel lighting up, fire everywhere. Very American, I feel.
In a tunnel. Yeah.
Very like American action movie.
Yeah.
Because like unless you're driving a Cybertruck, cars don't usually blow up.
Just explode, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a car fire?
I've been in a car that was on fire.
Wow.
Just the engine. Like we pulled over and my dad put it out.
It was just the engine.
And then we continued driving.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
the 90s,
wild.
man. The 90s was a different time. It was probably like 45 degrees Celsius out, and the truck was just like, nope.
Oh, it was too hot. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy. I've overheated some engines. I've never seen one on fire that I was in.
We were driving and smoke was like coming out of the hood, and we pulled over and Dad went to look at it.
Amazing.
Yep.
I've seen cars on fire like on the side of the road, but I've never seen like the action movie thing of like I've seen car accidents happen, of course. But it's never like one hits the other and then boom, they explode. Like that's not a thing.
I feel like it was a very small flame. Like we weren't in any, we probably were in some danger because it was a car, but you know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh God, we're going to burn to death. It was like, oh no, what's that?
Mm-hmm. Probably had some oil in there
or something like that. I don't know. I feel like my dad wouldn't continue driving if it was broken, like obviously.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah, but so that's how his parents died in a terrible car accident / fire. And then he talks about how they appeared to him at like at that moment.
Which he's mentioned before, but I don't think we've gotten details about it.
Yeah, I think when he mentioned it, I was like, and we will never hear about this again, because I didn't really like remember. It's pretty fleeting here that like he talks about like, yeah, I saw them and I knew that it happened. And it seems to me like he said those are his first ghosts ever, was seeing them.
He just said they were a couple of shades that, and he was pretty young when it happened. I want to say like 5 or under. I'm not 100% on that.
I think that's
and he
right.
mentions how he didn't like front of his mind know what that meant when he saw the ghosts, but deep down he did know.
Right.
And so, and it's funny because all the adults involved sort of tried to give him that last night of ignorance and didn't tell him until the next morning.
Yeah. He talks about, they came and told Jessica and he listened in anyway, but.
Yeah. And he listened in and he saw their ghosts, so it didn't matter that they'd waited.
Yeah. You can tell Jessica loved him for that, the trying to shield him.
Yeah.
And take care of him. Yeah. It's sad.
So then they just sort of sit there for another minute, and then Lockwood is like, all right, let's go.
I think he does. He talks to her. I think this is an important part of the arc that he goes on in this book, where he says, this is what the problem means.
Right.
This is the effect it has. Lives lost, loved ones taken before their time. And then we hide our dead behind iron walls and leave them to the thorns and ivy. We lose them twice over, Lucy. Death is not the worst of it. We turn our faces away. So like the way he frames it, there's like he would see it as a failure to not come here. Like it renders their death utterly meaningless if he was to like move on with his life, because they would like cease to exist completely to him. Like that's how he feels about it. I don't think that that's right, but that's the place that he's in right now.
I think the same thing, but kind of differently. I don't know. I think he's more saying that it's society that does that and they have to fix society or the world or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
The thing with the problem. Like, I think it's less personal, but I could be wrong.
I think he does have like a resentment towards, this is part of the reason why he doesn't like the ghosts, right? It's not just that they killed Jessica, but that there's like the whole problem renders like death into this thing that people turn away from. And he refuses to turn away from it because of the pain of his family. And so I think he has like a strong resentment towards the people who turn away from it, but towards the problem itself, because he sees that as the root cause. And so like that's part of the reason why the ghosts are so like make him so angry.
Right.
It's all wrapped up together for him. It's also like, he's just like stuck, I think, in this emotional place where, like I said, this is the future. There's no getting out of it. And there's something real about that because we're all going to die. And so like, that's what he's kind of looking at. Like I will die and this is where I will be. And like, that's true. You can't argue with him about that. But that's not the only thing there is to life, is the end.
Yeah. And on that note, he has that line where he says, well, none of us are here for very long. While we're alive, all we can do is keep on fighting. And Lucy repeats that while we're alive bit. And that kind of that really sticks with her throughout the rest of the book.
This makes her really worried.
When she thinks about Lockwood and his kind of dreaming about being in that empty grave.
Yeah. Yeah. When he talks about his parents visiting him, it also made me think about when Lucy talked about her father dying in an accident and that she was grateful that he never came back and they never saw him again because she never liked him. So like, I don't know, for Lockwood discovering his talent in that way, like his talent on some level is associated with becoming an orphan for him. Like that is the moment that he knew that he had powers, because he became an orphan in that same moment. So, and Lucy already knew at that point, you know, by the time her dad died, she had been seeing ghosts for a while out in the countryside and stuff with her sisters. So like I mean, she's not totally an orphan, but like she's estranged from the family she has left. And it's just like they're in different places with that stuff. And her talent feels like a balm to her, I think. Like she takes a lot of her identity from it. And I think for Lockwood, it's almost like trapped him in that moment of, yeah, I saw my parents, and like, this is what it means to be able to see the dead.
I don't know if I agree with that reading of the situation, just because throughout all of the books, we see him take such joy in being an agent and having talents and being able to do this.
Yeah, that's fair. He loses himself in work.
Yeah.
He takes a lot of energy from his work.
I definitely think his relationship to it all is connected, obviously, to the first time he saw ghosts being his parents. But I don't know if he feels trapped.
Yeah.
If anything, I think he feels connected.
That makes him, yeah. There's a whole thing, the death wish thing.
Yeah.
Of like, yeah, you ride on
honestly,
that razor edge.
I'm so surprised that's the first time this chapter you've said that. I was expecting you to be like chapter 6, otherwise known as Death Wish chapter.
Yeah, I mean this gets introduced here. I think we actually say the word Death Wish from Skull at some point, which is like a whole thing about Lockwood. Yeah, he also has this thing about meaninglessness that I think is really important to how he sees the world. Is that still in this part? Yeah, it is. Yeah, Lucy's like, I'm glad you brought me here. And he says it's nice to share it with you, though all it really does is show you how arbitrary everything is. A ghost killed my sister. My parents died in an accident. Why did they die and not me? Believe me, I've looked for an answer and there isn't one. There's no meaning to any of it. And so this like meaninglessness is something that I think is also keeping Lockwood trapped in this view of the world, that like all that waits for him is death, and that death will like reunite him with the family that he loves in some way. Because like over the course of this book, all of those deaths are going to, like, the truth behind them is going to come out to him, and the meaning of that truth is going to change his relationship to this empty grave. And so that I think it's an important thing that Stroud is doing to establish that Lockwood feels like everything associated with the problem and these deaths is meaningless, because meaning making changes his outlook to the world.
That's interesting. I usually enjoy the exploration of meaninglessness in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But if I talk about it, this will very quickly turn into a Buffy podcast. We don't need that.
I think it's significant that the gravestone says knowledge sets us free, like in the context of that whole thing.
Yes.
So he just doesn't know. He doesn't know everything that he thinks he knows, you know, like he thinks he's explored this to the maximum place that he possibly could. And there's more for him to find out. And when he finds it out, it will set him free. It's
interesting that he has kind of a reverse, like, detective story or thriller story here, because he's not bent on revenge until he finds out that there's someone to have revenge upon. And then he's like, whoa, maybe this isn't meaningless. Maybe I can have revenge.
Yeah, maybe there's satisfaction to be had.
Yeah.
That's funny. I mean, it's not funny, but like, you're right.
It's sort of the opposite of most revenge stories.
It's inside out, yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, and we don't really go in too deep into the idea that he wants revenge. Like, it's just sort of, like, I'm reading too much into it there, but yeah.
I think it is related to, it's not, I don't think it's so personal. It's kind of what I was saying about like how he sees the problem writ large. And it really is like, it just so happens that his personal revenge is related to the problem writ large. So like, you know, that's just, you know, good fantasy writing where, you know, the trauma of the world is your trauma. It just so happens. And solving it changes the whole world, and on and on and
on. Chapter 7?
Chapter 7, yeah.
In which Lucy and Skull have a talk, and then George briefs the team about about the ghosts shows.
Yeah. The ghost shows.
That when she was alive. And Alan
The
wrote down the
Belle
French,
dams.
but I've drawn a line in the sand that I refuse to cross. Chapter art is obviously Skull in a jar with a cup of tea.
It's really, it's so like sharp and clear, and that tea looks good. It's like steaming and
like, oh, and you can see the thinking cloth too underneath.
The thinking, yeah.
Yeah, like knowing now how the artist does the art, the fact that you can see the steam coming up off the mug, that is hugely impressive.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. So basically, Skull tries to have a bit of a gossip session with Lucy about how things are going with Lockwood.
Right. Yeah, it's great.
And Lucy tries to sort of ignore, or not ignore, but brush off what Skull is implying might have happened in the graveyard.
She's just lying to. She's like, we went on a case. And he's like, of course you did. I'm sure that's exactly what happened.
No equipment.
Yeah. Hey, look, your pants are on fire, by the way.
Yeah.
It's just really funny.
But throughout that conversation, Skull brings up ectoplasm and how he can tell when it's around, which is how he could tell the difference between, or how he could tell that Penelope was Marissa, because it's the ectoplasm that makes up like the spirit, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, but I think it is in line with like the idea of ectoplasm from the real world, from our world, that this is like, the part of you that bridges the gap between the physical and spiritual, that there's some kind of fundamental essence to people, and it's located in this material. It seems like,
And then Lucy tries to ask more questions about Marissa, and the Skull is like, we were going to talk about my freedom.
Yeah, he wants a deal. Like, if you want information, you got to give me something in return.
And then Lucy is like, well, what would you do if I let you out? And he's like, kill George.
Yeah, so maybe no deal. Yeah.
And then Lucy's like, well, why would I let you out if you're just going to kill everybody and leave? Or who would you even talk to? Why do you want out? And he's like, I would talk to you. I'd stick around and help you. And I just wrote down, best friends.
She's like, you'd kill my friends. And he's like, your enemies too. Like, I would help you out.
He didn't say anything about Lockwood. And to be fair, George is the one who was torturing him back in the first book.
Oh, yeah. He hates Covens. So. Yeah, that's his nemesis. Yeah.
Do you think, were Skull to be let out, would he kill Covens?
Right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would.
I don't know. I think he's all talk. Or at least I think he's more talk than action. Maybe not all talk.
I think he has definitely become less malevolent than he initially was. He's been on a journey for sure, and he might be more bluster than bite now. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I also just think he knows that if he killed Covens, Lucy would just lock him up again.
Or she'd hate him.
Or both probably.
Yeah. It would ruin anything between them. And she's like the most important person to him in the world. Like, obviously. I do like that they start off talking about Lockwood and the way that she is hiding things from him, because like when you read Skull as the other half of her, it shows that she has like an ambivalence and she's worried about that whole situation. But she's also like, she's happy Lockwood shared something with her, but she's upset by what it could mean at the same time. So she has like a complicated ambivalent feeling. And, like talking to Skull really highlights that in a fun, entertaining way. So it's just more good writing from him. But I also like this little thing that Skull says about, like they talk about like, oh, would you, what would happen if I let you out and blah, blah, blah. But then he gets into like what it is to be a ghost, which I found really interesting. He's like, it's not, It's nothing but emotions and desires with us spirits, as I'm sure you've seen. I've lost my gold. I want revenge. Bring me Marissa Fitz. All that old hokum. Know what my desire is? It flashed a sudden grin at me. Something foul, no doubt. To live, Lucy, to live. That's why I talk to you. That's why I turn my back on what waits for us on the other side.
I really love that she then asks him, what does wait for us there? And he's like, how should I know? I'm over here too. I don't know.
Yeah.
You were over there. Do you know what happens after we die?
I didn't do it. That's obviously why I don't know. Like, come on.
But I just love that that logic where he's like, you've been there as much as I've been there.
They're very close in all of the, like, we're really like coming up against the edges of our knowledge in the books, right? There's nothing more to glean from Skull. We're all going to learn together at this point, all the remaining secrets that are going to happen. Do you think that this is about desire for him? Because I read it as fear.
I mean, those are kind of the same thing in certain circumstances. In certain circumstances, yeah.
Interesting.
He desires to be alive because he fears being dead. Like I don't think in that you can't separate the two.
I see what you're saying. That the fear causes a motivation that manifests desire for life.
So you're not wrong, but I don't think it matters.
Interesting. Yeah, because I read desire, like when someone says the word desires, it brings me back to the thing that I talked about in the show of like, the whole thing of like desire is we become excited and then we do something about that excitation and then the desire goes away. And then that's what desire is about the peace that happens like afterwards. But like desire is like, I mean, to bring a car metaphor back, it's fuel in the tank for life. Like the point is not satisfaction. The point is not to get like the thing that you desire, because like your psyche's not after that. Your psyche wants it. It has desires because you need to go to the next thing in life, and like when you get there, your psyche finds something else to desire. Whenever you get whatever your desire is, it never stops. In other words, like it fills up your tank and you go to the next thing. So
I don't know. All of that could be called fear of death, though.
Yeah. I think all of that is in opposition to death, for sure. Yeah. I think that's what, that life is like all about that desire, and death is about the stopping of desire.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to me that like he's like, oh, all these people who are dead, like what they are is just like trapped desires or something, and my desire is to live.
That makes sense though, because that whole idea, both like in the books and out of it, like in all media and folklore ever about ghosts, the number one way to deal with them is to fulfill their desire. To finish their unfinished business.
Yeah.
And that's why ghosts stick around, because they have unfulfilled desires.
Mm-hmm. Like Annabelle Ward killing her murderer, yeah.
Like everything that Lucy's been trying to do, like the ghost in the chair with the money.
Right, yeah. And then he's gone, yeah.
But also like every ghost movie ever.
Yeah. Stroud didn't invent that. But I think it is like he did decide to include it in his... Yeah.
It is like it's what makes most sense in a world where ghosts exist. That they have an unfinished thing that they wanted to fulfill before they... Or like, at least it's the thing that makes the most sense in a world where ghosts exist, where not everyone becomes a ghost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Skull is this special, different kind of ghost. So I'm really interested in what... This really feels like it gets down to the heart of something that I don't know if Stroud cares about saying something, in quotes, or like trying to, like here's the moral of the story, or something like that. But this really does feel like it gets down to like some undergirding philosophical point of view that like he's directly talking about desire and death and like life and what does that mean. And for Lockwood, he says there is no meaning, and Skull is saying like there is a meaning and it brought me back to this world, and like that's why I talk to you. That's what brought me back from the other side. Like that all feels really significant to me. I'm not totally sure, like, what all that means. It triggers stuff for me, like I said, about, the death drive. And this brings up ideas to me of like Eros and Thanatos, and Freud, which is like love and death and where those things sit in his way of seeing things. I kind of plan on talking about George Bataille, a philosopher in the future who like has a whole thing that I think is really significant to Marissa Fitz when it comes down to Eros and Thanatos. And so like, I think he's really like getting down to something in this book that like, I don't know that he's like trying to teach kids a lesson or teach us the readers a lesson, but like, maybe he has a point of view about it all. I don't know. Or it's just like, maybe it's like you said that it just how the mechanics of the world work out for what he's built. And it just kind of says something all on its own.
Well, I do think good writing is when you have your, like good fantasy writing, I guess, is when you have your world building and your theme like mixed together really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a way that you're like trying to have a moral point, but like good stories have good themes, not good, like morally good. You know what I mean? Well-written themes.
Yeah. It's not like horned in there or something where you're like, where did this come from? Yeah. Cause it does feel like this stuff's always been there is kind of what I'm saying. And it's like, yeah, bubbling up.
I don't know if I agree that Skull is trying to say there's meaning, especially around desire. I don't think desire has meaning.
Yeah. I didn't mean to say it like that. How I brought up Lockwood's sense of meaninglessness, but that maybe like, is a little bit, I don't think that Skull is existentialist exactly, but like he has a story about why he came back and that it has to do with like, I want to be alive. I want to be in the world of the living. And Lockwood has an absence of story, I think, like things happened and they just happened. There's no reason. There's no like people just die and that's it. That's not Skull. He has a story. There's a reason why he is here, and it's because of his desire for life. So that, I don't know. That's a contrast.
I guess.
But yeah, they get done talking because George sleepily stumbles into the room, and Skull makes fun of him.
There's the aside where, because when they're talking about the ectoplasm and how he noticed the difference or the sameness, whatever, between Penelope and Marissa.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sort of says, insults aside, that's just one way in which I'm superior to every one of you, because he can tell what people are without caring about their looks, except for Cubbins. And then Lucy says, what does George have to do with this? And he's just like, what a person looks like doesn't bother him. Or hadn't you noticed?
Right.
And that's an interesting thing to say about George. And it is very true of George. But it's also an interesting that Skull noticed this about George. When Lucy and potentially Lockwood did not.
It's one of those things about George that even early on, I think makes Lucy uneasy about him or not like him. His indecorous looks. Like he doesn't take care of his looks, right? But it's because George doesn't care about that. That's pretentious to him. He is who he is. He's not going to dress up for the occasion, like, and he's not mad if you don't either. Like that's just you are what you are, and it's all good.
Yeah, and Holly, Jesus, and Lucy, of course, has spent all 5 books harping on and on and on about what she looks like, what Lockwood looks like, what George looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of antithesis there of each other, which is great.
Yeah. And, and George is the one who's with Flo, who like her looks would set most people going the other way, but George sees who she is and not what she appears to
I will
be.
say not her looks. She's not ugly. She just doesn't take care. She doesn't like...
She's covered in mud and, like...
that type of thing.
That's what I mean. Not that Flo might be ugly or something, but he doesn't... The outward appearance doesn't matter. Who she is matters to him. So I think Skull's right about that.
And that is rare. Like, amongst normal good people, that is very rare.
Yeah. I think this is one of the things that like the show people correctly were like, oh, George is autistic. Like a lot of times autistic people will be like, well, I wear this because it's comfortable for me. And I don't care, like what you think about the clothes, like, because I have sensory issues and blah, blah, blah. So like you can dress however you want and I can dress however I want. And it's fine. And other people are like, but I resent you because you think it's okay to dress however you want. And I have to put a lot of work into it or my boss won't take me seriously and I won't get that promotion. And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's a complicated issue when you get into work and jobs. Cause a lot of people like, so if you want to dress up just cause you like it, all the power to you.
Yeah, fine.
But when you get into, especially women of color being passed over for jobs and promotions and stuff because of how they look and how they present themselves and getting ahead if they present themselves more how the men expect to see them or want to see them. It's complicated.
But I think even people who go through that trauma will get resentful of people who don't play the game,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Even if those people don't get rewarded, even if those people are also punished, they'll be like, what the fuck, man? Like, why don't you care about this thing that is actually really important? And it's like, because it's not important to me.
Yeah, but it's, I can see from the other side where it would be hard to empathize with the person who doesn't care when it literally affects your life.
Your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, so all that stuff sucks. But yeah, I think that's why one of the reasons why George fits so nicely into the autistic, character, because of things like this, the not caring about the outward appearance, being hyper focused on the problem, on and on and on. He seems like he's autistic, whether Stroud meant that or not.
My problem is because like I love the idea of being George autistic. I'm cool, but I don't. It's so hard to get a read on what we know about George as fact and what we know about George as Lucy's weird, mean opinions.
Yeah, her perspective on him. Yeah.
So, yeah, like I love Show George and how they leaned into the autistic characteristics. That's great. I don't know if I'm ready to say that that's how he is in the books. Simply because of Lucy's point of view and how I don't think we get accurate versions of him.
That's fair. Yeah.
Anyways, everybody else joins in, and then George tells us about his research that he did, most of which is for the case, but he did go into a restricted library, or that you need a permit to go into, which is wild, but okay.
The Hardiman Library, yeah, with the new regulations, yeah.
To find out some more stuff about the beginning of the problem, but he doesn't go into that right now. We just sort of quickly, it's mentioned, and then he quickly goes into what he found out about our ghost when she was alive, which was pretty much that all of her performances were about having a tragic life and then being murdered. And then she would.
Like, she's always the object of men's desires, and then there's some kind of revenge taken by the men to murder her. She, quote unquote, dies, but then comes back because there's an escape element to her act. So she escapes the death to come back in the end.
I really do love Holly pointing out that you can't drown a mermaid. That's great.
So it like tells you something about the class of the theater, I feel like. Yeah. Yeah. So one of them, is a water escape where she's dressed as a mermaid and they try to drown her. Another one is the one that we heard about where they stab her with swords.
Lock her in a coffin or whatever and stab her.
And another one is she's hung.
She gets hanged, yeah.
Yeah. And that all of this is, the way that the research always is building up things so that later on when we see them, we'll be like, oh yeah, George told us about this.
Yes.
So we're loading the what is it? The gun. Whose gun is it? I can't remember that thing. If you show a gun in Act 1 and you fire it in Act 3.
Is that Chekhov?
Chekhov's gun, yeah. George is loading Chekhov's gun here, so that's what's going on.
But just like in a small, because it's going to happen in the next 2 chapters.
True, yeah.
We're not going to wait for Act 3. What am I saying? Oh, and they also talk about how her life sort of imitated her on stage performances, or vice versa, in that she was very promiscuous with married men and caused a lot of problems. And apparently this just made her shows more popular because the men who were sleeping with her would come to watch her and their wives would come to watch her die.
Right, yeah. It's brilliant ad campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole thing feels very vaudeville to me. It's not like a thing that happened in England, but I'm sure some version of it was happening. It's all tawdry, tabloidy.
Tawdry is a good word for it, yeah.
Yeah.
So then Lucy and Holly put forth that maybe they should do this case alone since the ghost is targeting men. And George and Lockwood are very like, no, we can handle this. We're not going to send you in there alone. And then George says, yep, we're cold-eyed professionals. And then immediately asks Lucy if he can have the poster that he brought of the woman back because he wants to stick it in my casebook as a fold-out spread. Thanks. I don't think I quite picked up on what Stroud is implying there.
I didn't either until you just said that right now.
But the second time I read this, or I don't know what time this is with me reading this, but I was like, oh, George.
I thought he was just being sentimental, but now I see what you're saying. I think you're right about that.
No, I think he's going to look at that later, and I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting how this whole thing goes, though, in terms of the gender stuff, because Holly's not exactly right about this. Yeah, but I like the idea that's in there as a place to start. That Holly's worried about this.
I think she's right.
I wouldn't agree.
I think
based on who she targets and who is vulnerable and who isn't.
Well, okay, obviously we're going to talk about this more when we get there, and I haven't reread it, and you have, so honestly, your thoughts and opinions are more accurate than mine. But I do think Lucy throws a wrench into things because of how she can talk to ghosts, basically, right?
100%. Yeah.
So I think that goes beyond gender because ghosts see that they can use her to have their desires, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we'll talk about it more when we get there.
We'll get there. We're already at an hour.
I know we're talking so long. Of course we are. Yeah. This 10-minute podcast amazing. Is going well. I do like...
it'll get down when we edit it.
Yeah.
It'll be 10 minutes still.
It'll be 10 minutes. For sure. I do like that after the meeting breaks up, that Holly and Lucy go to practice rapiers together.
Yeah, that's so nice.
It's beautiful. It just shows like so much evolution that's not commented upon. It's just real show, don't tell. It's so great. And
not to be binary in my genders here, but God, I love women just sticking together when they're surrounded by men. You know? Mm-hmm. Like even men that they like and respect, it is sometimes just nice to get away. Yeah,
and they have that close friendship, it feels like.
Yeah, and I love their friendship now that it is existing.
And Holly has she's like a full field agent. Like she's out there with the sword and like the whole thing. So I just love
it's
how much she's
like
grown.
Maybe she just needed a better, like, surrounding. I completely
Work
forgot the word.
environment.
Environment. Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
In order to bring forth her competentness in the field, you know?
Yeah. Someone to believe in her and not be like, oh, you belong here in the office where I can look at you as you're my personal assistant. I feel like that's what Rotwell was like.
Or like treating them like child soldiers doesn't work with everyone, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Anyways.
Holly's evolution is great as a character.
Yes.
I love that it's there.
And their friendship.
Yeah.
They're enemies to friendshipsness.
It's true.
All right, chapter 8. George, Holly, and Lucy are harassed by Rupert Gale on their way to the theater, where they join Lockwood and Kipps. Almost the whole team. Although we see Flo in this chapter.
We do see Flo on the way. I was like, should I include
team.
Flo? This sentence is getting long, so I didn't do it.
You could have just said the group.
The group.
Or
yeah, Flo is in and out of this chapter. She shows up and then runs away.
She shows up to make eyes at George. And
it's
then
true.
She's
it's
gone.
so cute. So cute.
The art is some posters of the current carnival thing happening.
Yep.
Presumably at the carnival, like on the grounds or whatever, which kind of a stupid place to put up advertisements since people would already be there.
They're already there. Yeah.
Maybe there's like a fence around the outside. I think it does say that there's a fence around the outside. So I guess you would put up posters on that to advertise what's happening on the inside.
Mm-hmm. And I guess they have to, it talks about how to get there. They have to take some trains and walk and all this stuff. So they hit the road. They lock up Portland Row and get on their way.
Yeah, Lockwood had to pick up some supplies, so he is meeting them there. Which is hilarious because they spent like the last couple chapters saying about how Lockwood was going to get supplies delivered. I guess the Instacart driver forgot something. Very real.
I think they talk about too that a lot of their supplies got left at the mausoleum.
At the National Monument where nobody knows they broke in. Yep.
Right. Yeah, that seems bad. I was like, oh, what are you guys doing?
That's not good. Including Lockwood's like very specific rapier.
Yeah. It's as bad as leaving his coat there or something, but
it's okay though, everyone. That never comes back up. It
really doesn't.
Them at all. Man, those first couple chapters, they were not great.
Just kind of empty calories in story terms.
Yeah. Anyways, so we're on our way, and then suddenly Flo jumps out of nowhere, and I think kind of startles Holly. Oh, no. I'm misreading that.
No.
Oh, she does. Yeah. Holly jumped. Sorry, I was looking at the bottom of the page when it's at the top of the page. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and Lucy grabs her rapier. Like they think it's like a zombie or something jumping out of she bursts out of a pile of garbage, but George is like, hey, Flo. He's cool. He doesn't react at all.
And then I think George had something for Flo, or Flo had something for George. I don't even remember. But basically, they both just keep asking how the other is doing, like 5 times here, while staring into each other's eyes.
Grinning, yeah. This is, the first introduction of Flo in this book. So we get like a description of her and a reminder of who she is in terms of the story. And then he shows and not tells us that George and Flo are dating, basically.
I don't know about dating because, I don't know. You wouldn't be this cagey. Cagey is not the thing. You wouldn't be this.
I feel like these two would.
Oh, maybe. Maybe.
They're in their own little world here. They don't care about Holly and Lucy being there, it feels like.
Flo gives them a nod and then asks George how he is again.
There's a good thing of like Holly and Lucy just keep looking back and forth between the two of them. They're very confused by what's going on.
As though anybody could like either of these people physically.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, wait, what? Yeah. So it's pretty good. And then Flo is like, uh-oh, I see the regulators, and she beats it.
And then Sir Rupert Gale and some unnamed, some like red shirt Fitz guys walk up.
Yeah.
But Fitz's gray hoodie or sweater or jacket or something.
Basically fascists.
Yeah.
Doing fascist stuff.
And then Gale just sort of gives them a hard time, very much like a Nazi officer actually would, like, show me your papers.
Where are your papers? Yeah.
Are you allowed to be on this street? Where are you going? What are you doing?
Harassing
them. And
them.
then George, I get that he has noble intentions, but it's the stupidest thing. Where he gives Gale a hard time.
He antagonizes him. Well, I think it goes to this moment where, so he saw Flo.
Yeah.
And he talks about Flo. Okay, I'll just read it. So he says, "But what was that foul creature with you?" He glanced down the alley. "A beggar, I suppose. You didn't know it, did you?" "No," I said. "A beggar, as you say. I can still smell its stench.
Yeah,
if it is pestering you, you should have kicked it." So like he keeps saying it instead of.
That's so terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. This really gets under George's skin. And he gets very belligerent.
Yes, and I get it. I do. And I even get standing up to fascists, obviously. But there are smarter ways to do it.
Yeah.
And George's, I feel like he gets very passionate here, and that's just never, it's hard to be smart and passionate at the same time.
It is.
And so after he kind of stands up to Gale, and Gale, I don't know, gives them a hard time-ish, and George tried to give Gale a hard time. Him and the Fitz agents walk off. And then Holly's like, what are you doing? Do you want us to be arrested? And Lucy says, "Do you want us to be beaten senseless?" Which that comes back later. Yay.
Yeah, because don't forget about what happened to Bunchurch, right? Like that's already happened in the story. So
yeah,
we don't know exactly why, but it seems related to this.
Yeah. And that's basically what this conversation is doing, is setting up what happens to George.
Yep. It's a bad situation because he is definitely taking the bait, but I think out of all of them, George is also the most morally courageous. And,
absolutely.
It is kind of what Skull said too. He really cares about what's inside of people, and he just has a hard time putting up with this bullshit from people like Gale, and he responds the way that he responds.
I even feel bad saying that this wasn't the thing to do here, because what else are you supposed to do, really?
I think, Lockwood is doing a smarter kind of resistance. Like, they always have all their papers and orders, but they are kind of doing their own thing. Like, that's a little bit of a better strategy for resistance. George would be right in your face with it and be, and those are the people who get stamped out early in these kind of things.
Yeah, die a hero or live a day to resist again, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite that dire on the streets just yet, but it's quickly going that way.
Yeah.
Anyways, they arrive at the theater. The girl taking tickets at the entrance is basically like, "No, go away. You don't want this."
It's dangerous in there, guys. Go away.
Yeah, it is closed, but isn't that what you want the person at the entrance to say? But they see Mr. Tufnell and he waves them in eventually. Oh, and they meet up with Lockwood and Kipps. Kipps is here.
Kipps is there too.
I do love that the implication, because Kipps is all, just ran into Lockwood at the supply store. The implication being that he was waiting around in hopes to run into Lockwood at the supply store.
Yeah, Kipps doesn't have a lot going on these days.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. But yeah, show's over for the day. Girl says not to go in, but then Mr. Tufnell is like, "Hey, come on in."
Yeah.
We get an update on Charlie Budd, who has just started screaming. So they've locked him up.
He's getting worse. Yeah, he messed up the show, so they had to refund tickets. So yeah, now it's a real crisis. I mean, people died before, but now we're talking about refunds. Now it really needs to get solved. this is about money.
They head into the theater, and Lucy has this thought about how, like, Lockwood and Co., they're not really theater people. And it kind of sounds like maybe it's her first time in one, and so she's surprised about how, like, the outside looks very... Yeah, it's nice inside, but the outside does look very run down and uninviting, and she's surprised at how well kept it is inside, and how there's, like... I feel like there was gold. I'm sure it's not real gold, but, like, gold sculptures and stuff, and it looked nice.
She's right that, like, theater people are the worst people, so I could see why they stay away from them.
I mean, not wrong. We get shown onto the stage where there's, like, a crash pad of mats, and the trapeze artists are mentioned, because we got to set that up.
Right.
I will say, Mr. Tufnell mentions some props and then says the stage manager designed them. That's not the stage manager's job. And I feel like if the prop master heard that the stage manager was designing the props,
interesting.
I feel
Do you think that's a person wearing two hats? Do you think that's a Stroud mistake? Or do you think that's like Tufnell is not a good manager?
Well, look, if you're in student theater or in community theater, everybody does everything, right? Because you can't afford to hire one person for each job. But I don't know. I don't know what this guy, like, he obviously wants the money, so he might be saving the money by not keeping a prop master around. But still, I feel like it would be a stagehand's job to keep the props nice, not the stage manager. Stage manager's got a lot going on.
Or at least the person whose act it is to, like, handle their own gear.
No, performers cannot keep track of props. That's
okay. I really don't know anything about theater, so this is good.
That's not what that's about. It's the stagehand's job to chase them down and be like, where did you put this? I need to make sure we have it all at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And that it's all in its right spot. Like, this is for theater,
That's
though.
Funny.
I guess, like, circusy type performances would be a little different, but you still need everything to be put away in the right spot so you can find it all the next day. And if it needs repairs, you need to repair it before the next day.
Yeah. So again, it does feel a little bit fly by night or low class theater. Like, everything is not like a tip top performing troupe,
Yeah, it does feel maybe like everyone is doing 5 different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Or Stroud doesn't know much about backstage theater, which is fair. Not many people do.
Mm-hmm. It is kind of fun to see this side of the economy, though, like the entertainment economy.
Yeah, that is interesting. I'm honestly surprised something like this still exists at all. I wonder if they're like the only one, and that's why they stay in business. Yeah,
I don't think there's a lot of this kind of thing, but you would think there'd be an even greater demand for it, among some people, just
getting out of the
way
house.
To escape.
Yeah. Think about something else.
But you can only do it in the daytime. So, like, all these kind of things are fraught with, like, people have to work, and then how are they going to go to a show? So
yeah, I wonder if things like I keep wanting to put it in our world, but there's no sign of the internet in this.
No, not at all.
Or even like the precursors. Like, we don't hear about faxing or anything like that. So even if you were like a corporate person, you probably did not work from home ever. Because I was thinking, I bet a lot of corporate people would have days off and then work in the evenings because they'd be stuck inside anyways. But that would only
home.
work.
But I don't think that would work.
That wouldn't work in this world.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a class of people who are rich and who are rich adjacent. So they probably, I mean, they're obviously like able to survive, but it's probably, like you said, the market's probably pretty small. And so that's why they're able to make it along. Yeah. But this one crisis, I think, is threatening the entire survivability of the troupe. So
I'm sure they're busy on weekends.
Yeah. That's probably where they make most of their money.
Yeah.
Yep, but he lets them know, like, oh, yeah, there's a trapeze act, and then, we have, the magician, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, I can show you around over here. And Lucy's like, I'm going to hang back and I'm going to use my talent. And she like kneels down and puts her hand on the stage and kind of tunes in.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just like so powerful. She just immediately moves backwards like 100 years and taps
she's just
into
immediately in it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And it's also just very creepy. Like, maybe I've just seen or heard something similar in movies, but I feel like barely hearing applause in a ghost way, super creepy. Don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she kind of looks out at the seats and sees someone sitting there. Also creepy.
Who wasn't there a minute ago, yeah.
Yeah, and then is suddenly gone. No, thank you.
This is all pretty cinematic in that way. Like, there's a lot of sight and sound stuff.
Would have been good if anybody ever made a TV show.
Oh.
And then she sees how it happened, the death of the ghost, or the death of the human that became the ghost in the sarcophagus. And she specifically mentions that the sarcophagus was made to look like a woman. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, yeah. And
like,
she's not seeing it on the stage, though. She's like, that she sees the sarcophagus in the aisle and not on the stage. And that it's like being stabbed out there and the blood is starting to gush out of it and all this stuff in the seats.
Yeah, I don't like it. And it in that way, it feels more like the ghost is showing it to her and less like she's tapping into it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what's happening. She's made a connection to the ghost. Yeah.
And that's pretty much where we end.
Yeah. The blood's starting to flow everywhere. And and Lucy is like getting more and more freaked out. And then
which is fair. I too would get freaked out.
It's a good way to end the chapter because you want to keep reading, but we will not keep reading.
Yep.
Because this podcast is 10 minutes long. And we don't have time for that.
By the time I was reading this this morning, I hadn't had breakfast yet, and I was so hungry that I was like, oh, thank God. Food.
Yeah, it took a while to get through these. There's a lot of crunchy stuff here, though. So, jokes.
It's got to be something with Skull, because those were the only jokes.
Jokes.
You know, it's not really like, yeah, my parents died. Ha ha ha.
Right.
I do enjoy when he was talking about strangling covens.
Mm-hmm.
Carry out a spot of casual ghost touch now and again. Just simple hobbies.
Yeah, Skull's very funny.
That's like the only levity in these chapters.
To bring that stuff back down to earth. I do like the stuff with Flo and George and the way that Holly and Lucy are like, what is happening?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, and also George asking for the pinup back, basically.
That's totally different to me now because of you. So, like, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
I feel like I should say I know it wasn't a pinup. I use that wording purposefully. That's great. Most punk rock is obviously George standing up to Gail. Like, was it smart? No.
100%.
Was it punk rock? Yes.
Hell yeah. 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 I think he would have, if Gail would have drawn on him, he would have drawn right back on him.
100%.
Yeah, they would have brawled. He wasn't scared about it.
See, now that's interesting because George would lose to Gail, I think. But Lucy and Holly were there, and we don't know if the other Fitz people were good, bad. I assume not great because it's Fitz.
They're probably okay.
Yeah.
They don't know that Lucy is a murderer.
That's true, they don't.
So she will straight up kick a fellow in the butt into another dimension.
They don't know that she murdered the head of their biggest rival company. Yeah. And Flo was probably still close, so she could have joined in if fisticuffs broke out.
Flo, is also a secret badass. We don't quite know that yet, but she is like actually one of the best sword fighters in the story.
And also I feel like she wouldn't care about, clean fights or rules or anything.
Yo, definitely not.
Right?
Yeah.
She would
Fighting
just come
dirty,
out of
literally.
nowhere.
Yeah.
Kick you in the balls and push you off a cliff. She probably also a murderer,
Probably. Yeah.
Or willing to go, jealous that Lucy got there first.
Right. Yeah. She'd throw dirt in your eyes in a fight, but it would be the dirt from her coat, you know.
Yeah. You would just smell her and lose the fight. That's why she stays the way she is.
Yeah. So
But
yeah, 100% George standing up to Gail is punk rock.
I guess that's everything, huh?
Yep.
10 minutes on the dot. We did it. So if you have anything else to say about the themes and I don't know, things we discussed today, you can shout us out on Twitter at Lockwood Podcast. I understand that nobody really uses Twitter anymore, and that's the way it should be, but you can.
There's still Lockwood people on there. You'll get a like from our side of things every once in a while if I have time to be on there. Yeah. There's still people Lockwooding it up on Twitter.
Anytime I open Twitter, I'm just like, oh, it's so ugly and terrible.
It's bad. Yeah.
Every other tweet is an ad. Like
That
literally
too.
every other one.
Yeah.
Ugh. So you can find me on Blue Sky at Inferior Caitlin. It's very nice over there. Very like 2012 Twitter.
That was the best Twitter.
Yeah. That's kind
when
of
I
a
got on.
tongue tie. 2012 Twitter.
If you have thoughts about Eros and Thanatos, you can send them via email at contact@hollowedgroundmedia.com, or you can go to hollowedgroundmedia.com and scroll down to the bottom where the contact page is and fill out the form.
We do also read the comments left on Spotify.
We do.
We
Yeah.
just don't ever respond.
Yeah.
don't. We talk about it amongst ourselves though, because some of them are funny. in a good way. We like them. They've just never made it onto the show, really. Maybe once or twice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a challenge. leave us a comment on the word. I just said it.
Spotify.
Leave us a comment on Spotify. See if it makes it onto the show.
We
guess
read
you
the
have to-
reviews too of like, we're all over the place. So if you leave a review for us, we see that too. We appreciate it.
And remember, we're all going to end up in that empty grave.
Ugh.
The same one
Oh,
altogether.
No.